Hey, Ava and I just checking in, my baby girl. Um, I just wanted to talk about a couple things. We're finishing out Pride Month. In fact, it'll probably be in July when you see this. Good chance. And I just celebrated my 53rd birthday, which is the end of June. And then June 30th, I celebrate 2 years of being sober. So those are some cool milestones for me, I think. And I just wanted to, and also Pride Month is something because 18 years ago in 2008, and I was 34. A month before my 35th birthday was when I finally came out as a lesbian. So I kind of wanted to talk about that coming out story a little bit today. It's been quite the journey. I just think about that and how far I've come and what it takes to live your truth, It's not easy by any means. Especially, I grew up religious. And while my family was open, they were pretty open to everything. I didn't grow up in a family that was, you have to be this way and that kind of thing. I mean, we went to church and did that stuff when I was young and all those pieces. But it wasn't, my family wasn't like, oh, you're a bad person if you do these things. They weren't really judgmental. I didn't feel that way when I was young. However, as I've been kind of thinking about this and how to tell this story, how to make it sense outside of the world I know, and kind of hopefully make it relatable. I was thinking, I'm like, but there's just I was thinking about the societal norms. I mean, I was born in 1973, and growing up and in a religion, you're trained and taught that these certain things were truths, that you have to do these certain things in order to be saved on the other side, right? And it is so very much indoctrinated in you. Your subconscious is like taught this. So it didn't matter, even looking outside of self and all the things that I had no issue with people who were gay and all these things. But there was something about, I've thought about this tribal, where not wanting to be kicked out of the tribe. And if you're different, you may not have a home. You may not have food that night. That's that energy, right? And I know so many people who've come out of the closet, who've come out gay, come out to their families and didn't have a home anymore, right? They didn't have food on the table for them. It has been super difficult. So there's that fear that is there. And honestly, as a kid, there were times I think I knew, there were I remember when I was teenager, young teenager, when you're starting to go through puberty and that kind of thing. I was probably 12, 13 years old, I would guess. And sitting in a youth with my church, sitting in a youth group, and one of the leaders made the comment. This stuck with me forever for some reason. I wonder why. Just kidding. But they made the comment about that it was normal to have same-sex, not relationship. No. Same-sex feelings, to have romantic feelings for the same sex. That's what they said, that you could be attracted to the same sex, but that those feelings would go away. This was what I was told when I was young, in that age group. And while I never pursued or felt the need, that wasn't how I felt as a kid. I didn't feel like I wanted to be with other women and things, or girls and things like that. But I was wanted to be in the company, if that makes sense. It was I was a total tomboy. I played sports with I played sports with the guys. I was as good as they were. Probably not quite in some aspects, but I was pretty dang good. I had no issue being in the middle with all of them. And and doing all, all the stuff. And then I had as I got a little older, I had really close girlfriends that we just had a lot of fun together. And then even getting older and older, I just had these close girlfriends. I had a lot of different friends, but I wasn't, I was not in the energy of wanting to be in relationship with anyone, if that makes sense. I wasn't like that. It just wasn't like the idea of going out with guys, because that was, what my friends were doing and that kind of thing, was not what I wanted to do. Like, that didn't appeal to me at all, if that makes any sense. I would rather just be with my girlfriends and then hear about their things that were happening and whatever. It was much more. But, yeah, anyway, just interesting. So there was a lot of things that happened in my family life. I'm trying to, we moved, I right before high school, so I didn't really have a ton of friends. I kind of started to create this group of, there wasn't a lot. I moved like I said, right before high school, so everybody already had their friends and their groups and that kind of thing. And in that time frame also completely fell away from going to any religious anything. But that information is really indoctrinated in you. And it's not just the religious part. There was also very societal norms that were also indoctrinated. I mean, at the time, there were not even same-sex marriages. It was illegal. All this stuff, it was hard. It was hard for people to live their truth. And that kind of thing. I remember there being, I didn't think a lot about it. If that makes sense. There was kind of some feelings for a couple different girls that I was, as I got older. This is like late teenage and all that kind of thing. But it was really interesting. My parents were going through all kinds of crap. And I always felt very responsible for others. Especially my mother, especially, like I was very tied to her and just always was worried about her own energy, like making sure she was okay. And my parents were having issues, and I wasn't on good terms with my dad through all of that, actually. And so they're having problems. I'm highly protective of my mother, and I'm like 17 years old, and I will just call him D, and I meet him, and we're both 17 at this time, seniors in high school, and he was the first guy I ever even dated, anything. Like, I mean, I'd been on a couple little, platonic mostly dates. I'd kissed another guy once, and that was awful. I mean, literally awful. And, anyways, so I meet D, and there was just something. He was so soft and sensitive and kind, and he was everything I needed at the time with all the crap happening in my family. Feeling protective of my sisters and the whole family. Like, it was just my energy I took on a responsibility that obviously wasn't mine, other people's stuff, but I didn't understand that that's what I was doing at the time. Like, I had no clue I was an empath. Like, I honestly didn't realize or know I was an empath till I was, in my 40s. Like, truly, like, it didn't really dawn on me what an empath was and that kind of thing. But yeah, highly empathic. And from the time I was born, I had really taken on a lot of other people's stuff and feeling responsible because I could sense the energy in the room, right? It's like you walk in and and then I know all you empaths know this. And so you find ways to find, how do we keep things safe? How do we keep the energy good and safe? And by doing that, you end up making yourself small to help others feel better, if that help them feel seen and whatever, which is what everybody needs or wants, is to be seen. But in the aspect of it, you tend to kind of make yourself small. And there's just a part, well, I'm being seen or helping by helping others, which sounds and is a good thing. It sounds great, but when you're sacrificing your own well-being in the process, that's what I'm trying to say, is taking on things that aren't yours. And I did a lot of that, for a long time. So anyway, I meet D, and that became my life. Like, that's my trajectory. I've always thought that if I had kissed a girl before I married, before I married him, even if it hadn't even been the fact of, sorry, the window's making a weird sound. That's strange. Even if it hadn't been the fact of meeting him, even just if I had kissed a girl, like really romantically kissed a girl before marrying him, that I would never have married him, but I didn't. That wasn't the trajectory for me. So anyway, we ended up getting married. We dated for like 4.5 years or so, and then ended up getting married, and went along like 4.5 years. In that time frame, I definitely started having feelings for other women. Like, I actually knew I was gay. Like, I knew in my heart, in my early 20s, that I was gay. And I was really wondering where I was headed, what I needed to do and all these kinds of things. And crazy enough, in that time frame, my dad ended up dying. Just before that, I actually ended up, like, the universe literally aligned everything. It was so crazy. Literally aligned everything in space for me to get my kids here. And I know absolutely 1,000,000% that was what was meant to happen. I mean, seriously. And it was meant to be us as the parents of these children. It just was. Like, I understand. I've also thought about it, if we had divorced or hadn't gotten together at all and whatever, that somehow, some way, my kids would have gotten here. But there's just something, like, when I look back now, that I'm extremely grateful for the way it worked out. However, like, I happened to be in the room, like, I was at this point where I just didn't even think I was going to have kids. I had always thought I would, but there was, like, at this point in time, I'm like 25, probably like 25 years old. And I was like, I was 25 years old. And I was like, I don't even know that this is for me. However, the universe completely aligned for my sister. She's having a baby. Her doctor's out of town. And so another doctor comes in, who was a woman who took charge. Like, she was amazing, like, literally amazing. She took control of the situation that had completely stalled. I mean, my sister was the baby was coming and then just stopped. And then the nurses are kind of waiting. And then anyway, this doctor comes in, covering for another doctor, comes in, takes control of the situation. And within minutes, the baby's born. And I happened to be in the room. I had no intention of actually being in the room when my niece was born. However, I watched the whole thing and I was like absolutely fascinated. And absolutely, there was this feeling that came over my dude. Sorry, like, I'm just like, holy crap, because thinking back to that moment, and if I hadn't had my kids, anyway, watching my niece born, the doctor who handled it, I was like, I could do this, and I could do it with her. And I knew, like, she was going to be my doctor, and she was, absolutely. She birthed both my children, absolutely incredible. Helped me get things aligned so babies would be here and all these things. She was amazing. And I did. It was really crazy because there was a part of me, shortly after that, my dad died and all kinds of stuff. And then within, I swear, a month of his death, I was pregnant with Seth. And I'm like, he sent me him. He sent me Seth. I've always thought that. And I had both kids. They were I even knew that if they would be 2 years, 2 weeks apart. And that they'd be 2 boys, 2 years apart. And they were 2 boys, and they're exactly 2 years, 2 weeks apart. And it was the best decision. Okay, it's a huge one. In my life. Freaking love those kids. And, anyway, so that happened. So for that period of time of about 25 to 29, I was very in baby. Like, this was the trajectory. Like, this was the goal now, right? And really settled in with everything. But not long after my youngest son was born, I literally started having feelings for women again, for other, like having crushes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And there was a whole part of me that knew it was time to start taking myself in a different direction. In that time frame, I was very focused on my kids and my job. And those were the two things. When I was home with the kid, it was the kids. And when I was at my job, it was that. And in that time, I actually started spending a lot more time at my job because I didn't want to be home with my husband. And I didn't want to face the truths of what that was. And it got really hard. It got really hard. I didn't know how to handle things. Like I said, I took on a lot of responsibilities for everyone. I felt like I was responsible for my husband's future, and how was anything going to affect my kids if I get a divorce and come out as gay and all the things? What is this going to do to my children, and is my family going to accept me? And it was really hard. I went through a lot of anxiety, a lot of pain for a few years, trying to figure out what I should do, what I needed to do. I felt like I was blowing up my family, like it was going to destroy everyone. I was the breadwinner. So what was my husband going to do? I was a mess, but as it went on, time progressed and progressed. The feeling got stronger and stronger and stronger and deeper and more, that I couldn't hide it. My really good friend, we ended up buying a house in a city I really wanted to live in. And, when we moved, I became really good friends with my neighbor. We both had gone through some pretty rough stuff with the loss of my dad, and she had some rough things that happened. And we both her kids are a little older than mine, but we had younger kids, had children. So we had some points of mutual interest, big time. And we became really good, really close, good friends. And while she's not gay or anything, I did completely, totally fall in love with her. And I knew that even if it wasn't a relationship with her, because, I knew that I needed to be get out of where I was at. I wasn't living my truth in any aspect, besides being a mom, but I wasn't being even everything I could for them too, because I was I didn't want to be, husband and, in a partnership with these children, if that makes sense. And so neither one of us are being able to show up at our highest for them. My husband was having a hard time emotionally. I could tell, he had his own crap, his own feelings of things. I was trying to word that correct or better, not his own crap and whatever. His own emotional shit, of course, but he also knew if there was a problem in our marriage. It obviously, it takes two people, and he was having a really hard time there too. And so I could see all the pieces falling apart, if that makes sense, and I knew I had to do something. Thanksgiving of 2007, I really lost, like, I was so like this, like, I just couldn't even, I couldn't regulate myself or anything. And I just got in the car and drove, and I went to Vegas. I had friends that lived down there that were a gay couple, women. And one of the partners had been in a marriage or a partnership with a man before those two got together. And I don't know, I had to go talk to her. Like, I had to. And so I actually was able to express some of the feelings, and start to really put some pieces together. I had a few other friends, that were close, like through work and that were also gay, that knew I was, like, they knew. there's a knowing, there's a gaydar, right? There's a knowing. And so one of my good friends, at the time, through work, she called me out. She asked me and stuff. This was sometime before, and she became a confidant, like somebody I could talk to kind of start to try to work things through. It wasn't easy. And things are escalating within me. Like, I'm just, I'm like, I got to do something, and then trying to figure out when. My kids were, so Memorial Weekend, 2008, my husband took the kids camping, so he's gone. My friend from work, we went out. We ended up going to dinner and stuff, and then we were hanging out a bit and whatever, and then she ended up kissing me. And it was the first time I'd ever romantically kissed a woman. And I was just like, yep, this is my life. I mean, this is not necessarily her, right? But this is who I am, I've got to live my truth. And interesting enough, she was really great. She asked me, like, I think before I left, or as I was leaving, and she said, "So, are you still gay?" I laughed. I'm like, yeah, definitely. Anyway, just funny. So I knew it was time. The kids and my husband came home on Tuesday, and I had gone to work, and I came home from work, and there was a package I had ordered, which is so interesting because I had ordered it like the week before or something. And there was a package on the table that was half ripped open. It was like it got ripped in transit, right? I don't know, but it had books in it. And the books were all about gay, like, stuff, like information. Like, I was searching for answers. I don't know why I keep playing with my hair. I was searching for answers. And, anyway, so these books are laying there. They're the packaging's damaged. You could kind of see what was inside. And it was on the table, so I know that my husband had seen it. And, anyway, we put the kids to bed. We go downstairs, and we're both standing in front of the table. And he looks at me, and I'm like, I've got to tell him, this is where I'm at. And he looks at me, and he said, "So, are you into women?" And I just, honestly, I think everything just ran out of my body. Relief and everything. Like, it was all the anxiety, all of it. And I just was like, yeah. I said, yes, actually I am. And he looks at me and he goes, "Well, that makes a lot of sense." And we actually kind of laughed about it. And it was an interesting night. So I think it's the kindest, most honest thing that he could have said. And it broke the ice. The secret was finally out. And yeah, that night we actually talked for the first time we had talked in months and probably years. And we actually both ended up getting really drunk and then talking about girls we both thought were hot, and talked and just really like, oh my gosh, And I think he just knew there was a space of like me needing to release all of that. Like I said, he is a very kind heart. well, we didn't always get along great as married because we were better friends than we were in a marriage. But that night was such a relief, not gonna lie. And from there, it got really easy to tell everybody, to start just telling people. My family were the ones I was worried about, like my mom and my sisters and my brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law was like, I already knew. My sisters were surprised and extremely supportive. And my mom, she was great. My dad had already passed, so he already knew. And I wasn't too much worried. There's some friends, like I told my friend that I had the crush on. And that was great because we just kind of was like, aw. She was like, oh. And then we just, okay, this is who you are. And it just made sense. And crazy, we just kind of all moved forward. Now, my husband and I, as we went through, we divorced, obviously. It took about 6 months for it to all be finalized. However, in that time frame, we were definitely separating and that kind of thing. But we were really soft and kind with each other. Although it did get it got pretty dark for him and hard as we went through this, because we were separating and became not being with our kids all the time and having to co-parent kids. And that was tough, but it was good in the long run. We got through the parts. Some of the things, honest to God, I'm so proud of myself for, where there were a few moments where I could have gone a whole different direction and kind of been an asshole about stuff. I could have put my foot down and said, no, you're not doing this, you're not, whatever. And, kind of been really, I let him have some wins, if that makes sense. And in that, I was paid back dividends over time, right? Like there were just places where financially, right, we could have gone a whole other routes. And I just knew it was not in the best interest for the children to fight about certain things, and I didn't. And I'm really proud of myself for that, because honestly, it ended up putting us both in spaces of showing each other respect and helping us create a unit of co-parenting, even though we weren't together anymore. He ended up remarrying shortly after our divorce, and I moved on with my life, and it was great. And our kids had the parenting they needed. And they they grew up to be really fucking awesome. I'm really proud of them. But there's those pieces, and I'm really proud of myself for showing up and for myself in those moments. My youngest graduated from college last year. And I sat next to his dad at graduation, his dad and his wife at the graduation, right? Gave all his stepkids hugs. And I mean, this is the relationship we have now. We're better friends than anything. We're both really proud of each other. Everything I was so scared of turned out fine. And I get to live my truth. I get to support the gay community. I get to be gay. I get to be fucking gay. And live who I am, I've had different partnerships and stuff along the time. And then I got to a place actually where I knew I just needed to be alone and really needed to heal my own heart. I needed to really dive into who is Heather, because I'm just going to keep attracting wrong relationships. And I'm at a really great place with all of that now too. And I feel really good about who I am, Hi, Ava. So all of that to say, it can be really challenging and hard. And at the time, you never know what's going to come of it. And it may not look like my story. However, there is light on the other end of it, on the other side. There are good things that will come to you for choosing yourself, no matter what that looks like. I'm grateful I had children. I'm grateful I stuck around in that marriage long enough to have my children. But that's not everybody's path, and I understand that. I look at it, it's so weird to think that I lived 35 years of my life as a straight person, Nothing wrong with being a cis gender, whatever. I'm so open to anybody, whatever they, however you identify. I feel like that's what your heart is calling for you. And so I have no issue with that, but it's just I'm like, how many lifetimes are we going to live in one lifetime? Let alone all the past lives and all that stuff. I believe in that. I don't know where you're at, but I definitely know I've lived many, many lifetimes. I've learned a lot of lessons in all those lifetimes. I've had a lot of challenges. And I love all the challenges and the opportunities and the lessons learned and the places to be that I've had the opportunity of experiencing in this life, And I know what it feels like to be living in a body and knowing this is where I'm headed. This is what my soul wants, right? This is what I came to do, and not living up to that, or not living in that energy, holding yourself back. I know what that feels like, because we do it over and over again. In fact, there's been many times since then that stuff has been gnawing at me, and I still, hold myself back. But there's such a magic in that too. I just want to say there's such a magic in that energy of, even when you are holding that fear, and you're holding yourself back, because the ask that your soul is calling you towards, it won't go away. It doesn't go away. It just keeps coming back. And every time that it does, you've peeled off a little bit more of that layer of fear, right? And every time it's just a little bit easier to accept what your truth is, or what you feel in your heart is the truth of what's calling you forward. And this is with everything in life that is pulling you towards it. And we get to listen to those, but we also get to have love and patience and grace with ourselves, because while sometimes it's not that you're exactly ready to take the step. Sometimes it's that you're still moving through that. But when it keeps coming back, keeps nudging at you, keeps saying, hey, come on, let's go this way. You get to have the patience with yourself to start listening. So, to anyone, and that's in all aspects of life, like I said, but anyone who is struggling with having support or friendship, or seeing a different truth in their, a different aspect, I want to say, I'm trying to think of the right words, a different point of view, and know they need to come out of the closet, or however you want to word it nowadays, live their truth. And you need somebody to talk to, or someone to hold your hand, or just listen. Dude, I'd be happy to. I'm really, I would be absolutely honored to be that for you. Ava will listen too. She's really good at it. I said that because I know not everybody's path doesn't show up the way mine did. While I struggled intensely prior to coming out, and so much of that is around my own choosing myself, my own energy over others' energy, and but while I struggled so much with that before I actually came out, and was greeted, thankfully, with love, I know that, like I said, I know that is not everybody's story. And I just want you to know, I'd be happily here to help you through that. I'm sending so much love. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, anything, and I'd love to hear from you. Share with a friend who may be going through the same thing, and just sending you all so much love. And it's never, there's always support. There's always support. The universe is abundant with support. I love you. Ava loves you.